Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the June meeting of the Mono Basin Historical Society. I want to welcome everyone in the room, let you all know in Zoom land there's a beautiful potluck going on. It's a little bit of an Italian night. We got pizza, we've got lasagna, we've got great roll-ups, mac and cheese, a lot of stuff to make us on the heftier side, I think. We didn't go for health food tonight, though I do see some healthy options. So I wanted to let you folks know that after a few years as the president of the MBHS, I've decided to step down and spend some more time with my family. And so the Board of Trustees met last month, I believe, or maybe early, and sometime in May. And they have appointed David Swisher as our new president. So I'm going to hand this over to Dave, and he will take on from here. So thank you, Dave, for taking this position.
Thank you, Ms. Robin. It will be a very hard act to finish or to try and continue because you've done such an outstanding job for everything.
Thank you.
And we're going to be missed, but we're not going to let you go.
Oh, no. I said I will be an acting member.
That's right. And there's some things you still have to beg for. Do for us. But that's quite all right. So thank you, everybody. My name is David Swisher. I've been around here, Mono Basin, for many years. So I'll try and make this short, sweet, and to the point so we can get on to our outstanding presentation tonight. So the museum financial, I'll let her finish eating real quickly. Lenore Toomey, and this is a lady of many wonders. She has been able to get with the county, make arrangements for some of our upcoming events, fill out the paperwork, get it taken care of, and do many things. So she's busy, and with the museum, she's been taking care of all of that.
Thanks, Dave. So as far as a financial update, we're just getting open. We were first open, for Memorial Weekend. We had a great turnout so far. We've had 270 visitors, and average donation is a little over $1 a person, and that is just museum donations. That's not sales or anything else. So people are being generous with us. As far as projects that are going on at the museum, we received a grant from the county, and we were going to use it for grounds maintenance and improving some of the outdoor displays. Because of the winter that we had, we've decided to redirect that money toward painting the museum. So the museum will get a fresh paint job this year. And we're also going to put some money towards purchasing equipment to digitize the binders that we have in the museum to make them more readily available. And Linda LaPierre will be able to tell you more about that. So that's about the update from the museum. Thanks. The bell tower, we are still working on the bell tower. We are hoping to get a couple of contractors to look at it. And we received a $3,000 donation to go toward the repair of the bell tower. Okay, Dave.
Thank you. Linda, want me to bring this to you? Sure, do you want to? The bell cupola that Linda was talking about, we were able to save most of the pieces, and she and Chris and I, we did the biggest wooden jigsaw puzzle you've ever seen in your life. But we know all the pieces are there. So I'd like to introduce Linda LaPierre, our historian, bring us an update.
This will be short. As was mentioned about the binder project, that's what I'm starting to work on. I got the annex cleaned and looked for a place to have room to go through all these binders. It is going to be a big job. Anybody who wants to come in and help, I'll probably be there most days except when we are closed. The other thing I wanted to talk about is I did do a bird chautauqua basket. It's all for birds. It's for a raffle, and the drawing will be held at the Fallow Rope Festival at Hess Park. And so far, that's about all it started. So I'll hand it back to.
Thank you, Linda. has everyone seen the binders in the museum? If you haven't, they're behind the desk, and there's a wealth of knowledge out there that goes back years and years, and they're extremely valuable. We want to digitize them so we can have copies off-site and we never lose our hard copies. Museum. I'm going to stay there just for another minute. We would like to have some volunteers, 4 hours, 6 hours. Anybody that would like to come in and meet some great people, we could use some help at the museum. So if you're interested, please contact either me or Lenore, and we can get you set up and help you train and all that. We have some high school kids that are coming in to do it, and they're doing a great job. So we'd like to have some other help. Now, upcoming events, which is outstanding for the Mono Basin Historical Society. First will be June 17th. It's coming up quick. We have the bird breakfast. That's the bird Chautauqua. We put on a breakfast at 5 a.m. in front of the museum. We provide people at the bird breakfast quiche, muffins, sticky buns, yogurt cups, fruit, coffee, tea, milk, and it's a very good money raiser. It's about $500 for 3 to 4 hours work. So we get a lot of stuff donated, the coffee pots, the coffee, everything else. So if you want to come by between 5 and 9 and have breakfast, everybody's welcome. Stop by in front of the museum. Then July 1, we're having our Indian taco sale with Janice Mendez and her family. This is an outstanding chance for the society to raise some funds that we need. So it'll be held right here in Lee Mining at the community center. So everybody can come by, grab your Indian tacos and eat them. They are outstanding. And they're made by Janice's family, which is outstanding too. Janice is one of our trustees. And then Janet, the Fowler Festival. I told her I would let her talk about it because I do not want her flying off with the Fowler-ups.
So hi, everybody. Can you see me on Zoom? Rich? Okay, great. So yeah, this is going to be a really exciting bird Chautauqua. That we've had the Chautauqua in the basin for years. I think it's around the 20th or 21st. And there's always been a closing picnic, usually at the Mono Lake County Park. But this year, something special is happening. You might have noticed we have a mural artist in town who's painting phalaropes all over Lee Vining. He just finished the front of the Mono Lake Committee, which looks stunning. And there's one on the old Yosemite Trails building, on the which? Yeah, the pizza building. And there's also going to be one on the Lakeview Lodge. That's coming up next. So it's pretty exciting. He's going to be here for about 3 weeks. He's been here about 10 days so far. And also another crew of Argentinians is coming as kind of an interchange, because a delegation of Mono Basin folks went to Argentina last fall, and we saw the beautiful mural Bato did there, and that inspired us. And we also made some connections with people down there where the phalaropes go. In our winter, they go down there. And Mar Chiquita is 14 times bigger than Mono Lake. So a bunch of these folks are coming. So we wanted to really show them a good time and celebrate the murals and invite the community. So this is kind of the Chautauqua picnic reimagined and opened up and, embraced by all, we hope. It's going to be at Hess Park. It's going to be in town. It's not going to be at the county park. And it's going to be really fun. We have a local band. We're going to dedicate the murals, have a phalarope costume contest, have booths, have high schools doing food. I've even got a possible little tango couple to do an Argentine tango for everybody. Some folks from the committee. So anyway, I have some little flyers over there by my plate. If you feel free, I'll give you a little one if you want to put it on your fridge. But it's Father's Day, June 18th. The past probably will not be open, more than likely. But so we're really hoping the local community will show up. It's gonna be a good day in Lee Vining. It's gonna be fun.
Thank you, Janet. That was fantastic. Okay, next month's meeting, July 3rd. Bob Marks is giving a presentation. I'm going to tell you is the title, because it's going to be a fantastic presentation. Unceded Land, the historic content of the Mono Basin Historical Society Land Acknowledgement. Think what you wish. Show up for that meeting for the complete introduction and story. The ghost will be on August 25th, 26th, the pool power plant. We're still trying to finalize the dinner on Friday night. And as soon as that gets resolved, we'll put that out so everybody will know it. And further plans are being made by the Ghost Committee. It's the history of the Levining Canyon with the pool power plant. So a lot of history there. We're a history organization. That's what we want to do. So is there any other comments would like to be made? Okay, then let's get on with this month's presentation of Justice for All by Wayne Purcell. Wayne, it's all yours. Enjoy it. We're looking forward to it. Okay.
I'm going to move this up here if I can. So, great. I like to be close to the people I'm talking to, and thank you for inviting me up here. I ran into Dave and Janet at the ESI conference a couple of years and enjoyed meeting them. And then last year, my wife and I were invited to come up to Bridgeport to participate in the booth that the Mono County Historical Society was going to have up there. And COVID hit the Stoddard family like 2 days before, but we came anyway, set up a table in front of the schoolhouse up there, the museum, and up walks David, and you know, we knew each other from the ESI conference, and we had a talk. He bought a book, and first thing you know, he's asking me if I would like to come here. And of course, I'd love to do this. So it's a lot of fun. This is the fourth time I've presented on this topic. I have published this book last March, a year ago in March. So it's just been a year. And so I enjoyed meeting many of you already. And I want to say a special hello to the Zoom crowd. Hope you're having a good time at home. Feel free to relax and enjoy this program here. And I want to thank all of you who work so hard to save Mono Lake. I'm from Yucaipa, California, which is down between San Bernardino and Palm Springs. And so we're drinking some of the water probably that's coming from up here. I don't know, but we do have our own springs. We have the water that comes out of the springs there in Yucaipa, and they say that it gets used 4 times after it leaves Yucaipa on its way to the Pacific Ocean. So we get some of it first. And I know water is so valuable, so important, and so thank you for working on that. I am not a trained historian. I am not a trained writer. I was interested in biology. I got a biology degree from Berkeley, and thought I was going to be a national park ranger or a biology teacher. I ended up becoming a minister. I went to seminary and served in 2 large churches in Southern California. I worked with children. I was never the preacher, but I organized and managed behind the scenes kind of thing. So I worked in with junior high and youth and adults. And so when I do have a great interest, though, in Indian culture and archaeology. When I was in elementary school, my dad and I were in Indian Guides, and then my family was part of the Southwest Archaeological Association, and we did the excavation of Ayers Rock over off of Coso Junction. You know, anybody been there? It's a beautiful pictograph and a cave, and lots of pictographs. I discovered a cave that was full of pack rat stuff, and they ended up digging that thing down 10 feet. And I was 10 or 12 years old. For a kid like me to have done that, experience that, it was just so exciting. And when I was in high school, I was in an Explorer Boy Scout archaeology specialty, and we used to get to go over to Catalina and work over there. It's great. So there's a lot of distinguished guests here. Marty Meaden, I came all the way from Gardnerville, right? And how many are from Bridgeport that are here today? Couple. And 3 of you? Okay. 4? Okay. And and some of you, I mean, are on the council, right? I mean, you're have drawn a blank. Would you give me your name again? Pardon, yeah. So anyway, I'm a little hard of hearing, sorry. So if I confuse you, that's maybe I didn't hear you, but anyway. So how did this book come about? It's a historical novel, and it started in 1984 when I was sitting in a waiting room, had my car worked on, or at the doctor's or dentist, I don't even know, but I ran across this particular magazine called America West. Yeah, you might want to, oh, I'm sorry. So. Okay. So tonight, the stories behind the story. I spent 15 years working on this book, and tonight I'm just going to go a couple different directions. I'm going to talk about elements of the story and elements of how I researched the book, and some of the fun stuff I found in the process. So, so there I was in a waiting room. I just took that off the internet. I read this magazine called America West Magazine. This article is called The Paiute Revenge, the grisly crime brought threat of massacre. And I couldn't believe this story. And I said, it's so dramatic, it's so intense, and it's true, it really happened. And so, you know, I don't know if pastors are supposed to do this, but I tore the magazine article out and took it home with me. And kept it. And every time I'd come up this way, I'd pull it out and reread it. And every time my reaction was the same. It is so dramatic. I can't believe this story. And I can't believe nobody's done anything with this. I sent it to Kevin Costner through a mutual friend of mine, and I've never heard anything back. But in 2007, after 20 years of sitting on this story, I said, I almost heard myself say, why don't I try something? And so I started writing a movie script, and then I realized I had to figure out the rest of the story that I didn't know. And so I decided to write a short novel. And of course it got bigger. I didn't know if my name was appropriate to be a Western writer, Wayne Purcell. Huh? So I, experimented with Ezra and Bart and Jed and Jack and Tex, and it came up with Percy Wainwright. My name is Wayne Purcell, Percy Wainwright. But I Googled it. I found out there actually was a guy by that name at one point, and I didn't seem to work for me. It didn't seem to be a good match. So I just went back to Wayne Purcell. So, so I started researching, and at one point I joined a critique group and was in that for years and years and years, where you bring 3 pages of your writing and everybody reads it and talks about it. But all of a sudden this project became much more difficult. I thought it'd be real easy. You're just telling a story. What's so hard about that? But, I wrote it in first person, and then they said, well, this story should really be third person limited, not the third person omniscient. What? And they started talking about point of view, whose head are you in right now? And has anybody written any fiction, done any fiction writing? You know what I'm talking about? It's a lot harder than I thought anyway. So it's a murder mystery, and it's a historical novel. And with a murder mystery, you got to keep the suspense up all the way through. And you can't go off too many rabbit trails. Well, in my research, I found a lot of really fun rabbit trails. And I had people advising me, you got to cut that out. You can't leave that in. And I probably cut 30,000 words out of my manuscripts in the process of all that work, for for what, but so I'm not going to spoil the story for you. I'm going to talk all around the story. The plot is the best part of the story, and I didn't write the plot. I was asked once, did you ever hit writer's block? And I said, well, not really. I always knew what the next thing was because I read it in the newspaper from 1891 and heard it from the books that I read as well. Here's just some of the basics of the story. How many of you are kind of familiar with the story of what happened at Bridgeport in 1800? A lot of you are. How many of you read my version of it, the book? And so a Paiute Indian named Big Poker Tom, and his name was actually Poker Tom. I added the word big because he was big. And I just thought it sounded better, right? So he left his Nevada reservation, the Walker Paiute Reservation, Walker River, and he came down in 1891 to gamble in Bridgeport. Only his horse returned. A Paiute search party went out to find him, went to Bridgeport. Over a week's time, actually just 5 days' time, every day, important clues were found. The testimony of witnesses that had seen Poker Tom or seen him with others and seen him playing poker, and found blood spots on the floor. They found Tom's saddle, and there's a couple hundred Paiutes eventually came into Bridgeport from the north, from the south, the west, from Bodie, from Topaz, from Walker, from Mono Lake, right here, to assist with the search, to help in the search for their friend. A Paiute justice court formed and began to hold sessions with a judge hearing testimony. They had a judge, and we're going to talk about that in a minute, and testimony and sentencing. Mono County Sheriff Michael J. Cody, intending to employ the U.S. justice system that he worked within as sheriff of Mono County, he got involved. And on day 5, the Mono County doctor, the physician, Dr. Keebles, did an examination as part of the process and revealed a shocking fact, and an explosive situation resulted, including a threat to destroy Bridgeport and all of its residents. Like I said, intense, dramatic. Yeah, I mean, why hasn't somebody done something with this story? Sheriff Cody, with his sworn duty to keep the peace, tried. However, that's as far up as I'm going to go with that. So when you're writing a historical novel, how do you go about that? A lot of you are historians. What do you do to do research for history? This is a 132-year-old story, and how do you find out what happened? What do you do? Anybody want? Pardon me? Research. Okay. Newspapers, and what else? Talk to people. Family stories. Yeah, I was in Bridgeport a lot. I random talking to the gals over here, Edith McCann and her friend Judy, I think. Asked them questions and picked up information. When you go to a movie that's based on history, do you ever check it out to see if the story in the movie is actual? My wife and I generally always do. On the way home, my wife's Googling the story and finding out that a lot of the stuff in the story was either moved or inaccurate or just plain wrong. And we don't like that. We want to hear the truth. And so historical fiction is fiction. It's it's a story. It's created a story, and you've got to fill in the blanks with what you don't know. And but it's history. And some people don't like the way the book ends. The sheriff, doesn't come out where you would expect him to in a normal historical, Western. But, it's history, and I stayed as close as I could to what actually I knew was true. So in the back of my book, I have a website listed that you can go on, and there's a document there called Fact from Fiction. And I don't recommend that you read that before you read the book, but I go chapter by chapter and I explain everything that's true and everything that's not true. Or, and there's some things that are possible that could have happened. There's some things that are even probable that might have happened. And there's some things that are fabricated. There's a fight in a saloon at the end of the book that kind of resolves some of the tension in the town. And I think it's very possible, but it's not based in any research that I did. But there's that there as well. So, and I will say too, out of respect for the ancestors of these people who are in town or far away still, I changed a couple of names, and just to respect those people and their businesses and so forth. So, well, one of the places that I went was, of course, in Bridgeport was the Mono County Museum. This schoolhouse was on the other side of the road, and it's now here. This is Main Street. This is in 1891, that was the road, but here's the East Walker River, and across the bridge is where I have identified Ah Kwang Thai's store. And right now, this is where the schoolhouse was back in 1891, and now it's over here. It's the Mono County Museum. So there's a lot of great information. Kent started right here, couldn't be here tonight. I wish with which he was here. There's already some issues that have come up that I'd like to, resolve, but he's unable to be here, and he's done a great job. He and his committee have done a great job in researching and preserving history and displaying it and making it available. And I want to thank them, but I also want to thank you, because I know you're doing the same thing down here. And I really appreciate the work you guys do in this community, and all over the country. People are like history, and they're going after it, and it's very helpful to people like myself. So I went to libraries in Bridgeport. I went to museums in Hawthorne and Independence, libraries in Sacramento, Berkeley. I went to the Bancroft Library, used their materials. So let's move on here. This is a picture of the main street in Bridgeport in 1890s. And you can see how wide that street is. Why do you think the street was that wide back then? Traffic. What kind of traffic? Wagons, yeah. And cattle and animals. It smelled like a lot of animals had been through there, I'm sure. But it's great in that that Main Street is now available for their parade. It's now it's the longest continuously running 4th of July parade in the country, is what I've been told. They canceled it for COVID, but at the last minute, some folks gathered together and had their own little parade there and kind of kept it going. So let's see. You're looking at that one. I think that building burned down. Anybody want to hazard a guess? Yeah. So, yeah. 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 So, yeah, huge freight wagons. This is a picture from the 1880s of the bridge that went over the East Fork of the Walker River. And in the background is the Weddard store and the towel house. And the store, moved in 1901, is now the community church, moved back north of the town a little bit. So Bridgeport was a hub. It was like a distribution center of all the materials that were needed in all the mines and all the outlying ranches. And so a lot of materials passed through there and were sold through there. So these are some of the books that I used. The blue book by Frank Weddertz. Frank's is a descendant of Louis Weddertz, who was going to be drafted in Germany and decided he didn't want that to happen. So he had himself nailed inside a wooden box, a freight box, and put on a ship. And when they were transferring it to the ship, it fell in the water and he almost drowned. And he had 8 kids, and some of them are, this, oops, let's go back here. This Frank Weddertz, but there's a lot of good stuff in that book. This is Ella Kane's book. Ella was a 9-year-old girl who was having a birthday party on the climax of the book, unfortunately. And, but she was the daughter of, it's Ella Cody Kane, the daughter of the sheriff. And after her dad's term was up as sheriff, he decided not to run again for office and moved back to Bodie and helped preserve Bodie and helped get it turned over. She collected baskets, and there's a wonderful basket collection there in the museum in Bridgeport, and she's responsible for that. There's Sally Zanjani, and she's the one that read that original article that I was telling you about, that I read in the doctor's office or whatever. And but she was from up near Gardnerville. She's up north, but she knew a lot of these stories and wrote about them. Pioneers of Mono Basin, Margaret Calhoun. I don't know much about her, but these are all great resources for me. They really came in handy. The red book was told to me about Joseph Lent, who walked in the back. Wave, everybody wave, Joseph. Yeah. So that was a phenomenal resource. It was written by the people in the Walker River tribe there. In 1975, it came out, and I really appreciated that as a resource as well. It's called, it's actually right here, Walker River Paiutes and Tribal History. So I actually have all of these books, plus another one up here on this table that you're welcome to look at afterwards. Be careful with them. Some of the books are notorious for being poorly bound, and they have rubber bands around them, and they'll fall apart if you aren't careful. So another place that I went to was the courthouse. It's the Mono County Court, most beautiful building in Bridgeport. You drive through there and you can't help but enjoy it. Built in 1880. And I was hoping for a lot of help because, there's all these record books. Whoops. All these record books, the minutes, the criminal court, proceedings of the Board of Supervisors. But unfortunately, a lot of the materials, the transcripts from the preliminary hearing, the grand jury, the coroner's inquest, the County Board of Supervisors meetings that were of that month of June of 1891 weren't available. There was nothing there. And there was not really helpful. It was fun. I got to see, some nice, we're lost it here. Okay. Beautiful handwriting. That's what they look like inside. You can see all the fancy designs and some names they recognize. If you go upstairs in the museum, you can find the tax records, the assessors, and what everybody owned and how much they had to pay based on that. And it's a lot of fun. But not. It was blanks, and as far as the minutes of the court cases, they just were not accessible. I know they were missing the day after one of the sessions. The coroner's inquest was missing the day after it, but it must have been found because I know that one of the inquiries that the U.S. government asked for, they found them because they used it in that. But anyway, another thing, yes.
Get questions before you might repeat them.
Okay, thank you. Okay, sorry. So, yeah. So one thing that happened in the 1970s was the courthouse personnel decided that maybe it was time to kind of clean out their cupboards. And so they loaded up a truck with record books and went to the dump. And the word got around town, and some of the people who realized what was going on went to the dump and retrieved them, but they didn't find everything. And that's one of the reasons some of the things are missing. Yeah, yeah. So there we have Michael J. Cody. Isn't that a great name for a sheriff? Yeah, I love that name. Yeah. So, you know, when you're writing a historical novel, I mean, you're trying to get inside people's heads, their personalities, and trying to figure out what were they like. Were they mean? Were they kind? Were they quiet? Were they loud? Were they easily angered? Were they patient? Were they intelligent or not? You know, but when you look at that picture, what do you see? I mean, he seems like a nice guy. He's a handsome guy. The women in town really thought so. But he was young, kind of had a baby face. He's older than he looks, actually. But that's one of the main characters in the book. I put a minister in the story named Charles Hart. I had found no evidence for there being a minister until after I put him in the book. I named him Charles Hart, but I found out there was a Methodist minister using that schoolhouse. I went back into like February and March of 1891 in the paper, and I ran across information, and his name was Abbabone. I decided to stay with Charles Hart, but but he was a Methodist minister, and he was actually transferred out that summer. He the bishop moved him to another location. But there's a lot of unknowns when you try to figure these people out, and you go with your gut, you know, what you hear and read. This is the jail here that exists now. It's got 2-foot solid rock walls, and the reason it's wood or solid rock now, in 1882 there was a prisoner by the name of Yee Park who was in the jail with another individual. There were 2 cells. And about 5:30 in the morning, Yee Park decided he was smoking a cigarette, and he just wondered what would happen if he used his matches and his cigarettes to put a hole in the floor. And first thing you know, there was a hole in the floor, and it was smoldering, and he crawled out through the hole and ran away. He was caught and taken to San Quentin. The other prisoner barely made it out because the whole jail went up in flames. And all was left were these 2 cages, basically. And but you can walk into that jail to this day. So you look at these pictures; these are all in Bridgeport. What is this now? Sken Sporting Goods, yeah. Upstairs, above there, there was a saloon on one end and a saloon on the other end, and up above it was the Superior Courthouse. But what about that other courthouse that was only 10 years old, 11 years old? Well, the roof was not put on correctly, and it leaked, and the upstairs of the whole thing was wet and soggy and just smelly and mildewed. And so they had to hold these Superior Court cases, up here. This was called the Levitt House in 1891. It's now called the Bridgeport Inn. Great food. Anybody eating there? Good stuff. Yeah. In the back of the Levitt House, there was a back door, and a lot of the Paiutes would go there for lunch and spend half of their day's work working on the ranches and working in the houses to get an incredible meal. But it was part of the story too. This house right here is it says 1897 right there, and it's pretty much kept the way it probably looked in 1897. And so it kind of gives you a feel of what the town was like. This house, do you know where the community church is? It's kind of by the library. Yeah, yeah. If you were standing in front of that church, it's to your left. But you can see the hollyhocks and the the flowers and everything. This is in front of this bronze plaque is put there by the clampers. Are there any clampers in the room? E Clampus Vitus is the name of the group. No clampers here. They've been defined as historians who like to drink or drinkers who like history. And this plaque is pretty much the source of what a lot of people know about this event that is the plot of the book. However, as you can imagine, the clampers have a sense of humor. And the last part of this, I made this unreadable on purpose because what they say in that last part is really not true, but most people don't know it. It's tongue in cheek, it's a joke, and but it's not true. So anyway,
markers on the outside as you leave Ken's story goes on the left.
yeah. And there's the store, and if you go halfway through the store, there's a stairway that goes up, and that's part of the book. And Jim Reed, who owns the store, and I think he owns the building, I'm not absolutely sure, but he lives in what was the courthouse then. But I've told him, he's the world headquarters of this story because of all the stuff that happened right there in front of his and in his building. But in the middle is Kwang Tai, another key character in the story. And a lot of Chinese came over from China in the 1800s for the gold rush. Bad things were happening in the Guangdong or the Cantonese district of China, and they came over to try to make some money and send it back to their relatives. Kwang Tai, he came to Bridgeport in 1888, and he was first ran a Chinese laundry, and he ran an ad that said, please give me a trial. And that did happen, but not quite the way he had expected. But here he is in Western clothing. He was trying to Westernize. He was being tutored in math and in English, and he was trying to assimilate into the culture. And then, so we've talked about Michael J. Cody, Kwang Tai. We used Photoshop to dress him the way he dressed in his store. And he was about 5 feet tall. He had a 5-foot braid, and he wore a skull cap like that. You can see the braid here a little bit. We were never able to find a picture of Big Poker Tom. I went to Carson City. I went to Reno, Nevada. I went to everywhere I could think of to try to find a photograph. So we were trying to decide what to do with the cover, and this is what we ended up with. And Joseph's brother and sister kind of helped me, coach me into how to put him in, and so had him facing the other direction since we don't really have a picture of him. So now here's the issue that came up tonight. Marty Meaden has a picture of another building that I have never seen in Bridgeport that he's proposing is the actual store. These are the pictures that I got out of the museum in Bridgeport, and I should say I'm grateful to the Mono County Historical Society because they let me use these pictures for no charge in the book and in this presentation. But if you go down Main Street today, here's the courthouse. You go down towards the river, cross it. These are the pictures that I have that I have identified at this point as being where Kwang Thai's store and restaurant were right here. And so anyway, there's a lot of this story that's left uncertain, and hopefully are going to be helpful. Some of the things that I was told would be available to me were not made available to me. And you know, I went to Schurz to try to meet the living relative of Captain Charlie, who was the leader of the Numu. And I can't say that word correctly, I'm sorry, but that's the Paiute word for the people, and the Paiute people, Numu. How do you say it? Okay, I'll work on it. So, but this is an older picture. I don't know who that man is. And here's what the house looks like today. There's supposed to be a cellar in the building. I've never been able to find it. I haven't pulled up any floorboards, but maybe one of you will find that and let me know if you do. Okay. So
that house,
that's still there. Well, you know, on 4th of July, here's the river, yeah, and here's the courthouse, and so there's one house there, and then that house, and the pictures that are in the museum look more like this one, and see this one. There's a lot of similarities. In fact, the Mono County Historical Society actually thought about moving this building up next to the museum, but they decided not to. It's still there, but maybe we need to find out if that's really the right one. So okay, let's move on here. Here's why I hit the jackpot. Amy, the lady that leads the Bridgeport Public Library, wonderful person, and I had access to these microfilm things that you hook up here and you run them through the machine, and you look at them, and then if you see something you want, you print it. But they're really difficult to use. You know, they're can be fuzzy, big, too dark, not enough contrast. There's all these adjustments you have to try to make, and then you pay to print a page, and you hope you can read it. You know? And the same thing in the Historical California State Library and the Historical Society Library in Sacramento. It's difficult. There is a new organization called newspapers.com, and they say I've requested that they put the Bridgeport Chronicle Union on to digitalize it and make it available online, and they've put it on their list, and hopefully that'll happen. But it's, you know, the Bridgeport and Bodie, but also had news from probably way down here too as well. I mean, we're not that far. What are we, 7 miles away from Bridgeport here? 25. Oh, 20. Okay, sorry. Where'd I get that? I don't know. So the Bridgeport Chronicle Union newspaper was written by two brothers, Bob and Alex. Bob was short and stocky. He was not married, never married. Alex was tall and thin. So they said that if you read their newspaper, you'll get the long and short of it. So, and one of the side stories that I can't resist telling you is that the three of them, the one that was married and the two brothers, would ride around Bridgeport in a black Surrey wagon, and they had a horse named Ginny that they absolutely loved until one day it passed away. And so they hired some of the Indians to come in and bury it in their backyard. And so they had this big mound in their backyard with, you know, beloved Ginny sign over it. But a couple months later, some coyotes came in and dug it up. And there were the next morning, there were all 4 rigor mortis limbs sticking straight up in the air. And so they brought the pneumo back in, and they sawed off the legs, laid them along the side, and covered back up. But there's their gravestone in the library. I'm sorry, the cemetery there in Bridgeport. So these were some of the magazine articles that I used. This one right here was written by Lee Shackleton, who was a national park ranger in Yosemite. And he found his grandfather's scrapbook all about this incident. And he wrote this article, and it had some kind of new stuff and some new perspectives. So I drove to Mariposa to talk to him. And I found out when I got there, went to the information center, and they knew who he was. And they said that he had passed away 2 or 3 months before that. And so I was able to track down his kids. And I said, I'm looking for this scrapbook. You know where it is? No, we've never seen it. They were going to have an estate sale. I said, well, when you go through his stuff, would you mind looking for that and then letting me know if you find it? And it didn't pan out. Nothing. So, you know, he'd been a national park ranger. I'm hoping that he donated it to some museum or library or national park or whatever. Maybe it'll turn up. And if it does, let me know. Okay. So. And this is our friend Joseph Lent. Yeah. It was very helpful to me, and gave me a lot of good material, and really made a huge difference in the book. And I appreciate him. He's just a wonderful guy. My new friend, you know, so and brother. Yeah. So moving a little north. This is the Schurz area and the Walker River Indian Reservation. Walker Lake, the story in the 2nd chapter starts here where they formed the search committee. It goes along Walker Lake. It goes through Hawthorne. It goes over Lucky Boy Pass down along the East Fork of the Walker River through, is it Sweetwater Canyon? And then down into the Big Meadows and into Bridgeport. The Carson and Colorado Railway ran along the lake, and the leaders of the Walker River Indian Reservation had negotiated with the railway and were able to negotiate a deal where they would let the railway run through their property with in exchange for free passage on the railway. The only thing was, it's a different age then, but they were really grateful for this, but they were not allowed to ride inside the passenger cars. They had to ride on top of them or in between them. And then out of this smokestack would come hot coals and land on them and burn holes in their blankets and in their clothing. And sometimes they were also negotiated that they could bring their wares, their fish, to market, and sometimes that was not allowed either. But and part of the story. So I was told that Walker Lake would often have high winds, and these kinds of things would occur, and so they were actually saw these in the story, and they were afraid of the things. They thought they were spirits or spooky, you know, ghost-like specters. There's been stories of the serpents that have been found there, and I understand in this lake too. Huh? And I heard some stories tonight about pterodactyl kind of things too in this area. And so anyway, the first day I went to Walker Lake, the wind was just like, I took this picture. And I went north and I came back south. When I came back, they shut the road down because the winds were so ferocious. So Wovoka is in the story. And I wanted to visit his grave, which is right here, his cemetery in Schurz. And this picture of Wovoka, and people some revere him today and bring him gifts, as you can see what's there. Here's his gravestone. So when I went to Schurz, I pulled up at the post office and I went inside and I asked them where the cemetery was, and the lady was not a fan of his and said he was a beggar and drunk and hung out by the railroad station and was not esteemed. And he said that we didn't do the circle dance that Wovoka prescribed, which was called the ghost dance back in the Lakota Sioux area. And if you know, I have a shirt up here. It's a ghost. It's a replica of the ghost shirt that was part of the whole issue with the Battle of Wounded Knee. And he predicted that in the winter of 1890 and spring of 1891, that if they did this ghost dance like 3 or 4 times a year for a week long, that the millennium would come. He was orphaned when he was about 12 years old. He went to live with the Wilson family in Yarrington area, and he was it was a Bible teaching, you know, and hearing about the Messiah and the kingdom and the millennium and all of this stuff. And he got sick, and he started seeing visions when he was sick. And it was basically, it sounded like he was in a coma or something, but he started seeing things. And so anyway, there's a picture of Wovoka plays into the story. I went to the tribal headquarters up in Walker River, Paiute, and was trying to find Captain Charlie's grandson, whose name is Brett, I believe. And I went to his house and got to meet him. But I was looking for information. I was looking for photographs, and didn't find too much. But it was fun trying, right? So over here on the right is one of the pictures of Captain Jim. In the book, I call him Old Man Jim. There were too many captains in the story, I was told, and it was just too confusing. So I renamed him Old Man Jim. And on the left over here is Captain John. And they're relatives of his here, I think so. Yeah, Marty's great 5 greats. Okay, that goes way back. Yeah. So I found literature that talked about justice system of the Paiutes. I found a photograph of an illustration that's kind of like this. They have it in Reno, and they want $250 for me to use it. So I drew my own. And as you can see, I'm not that great an artist, but they had a judge who was an esteemed person, and they call the person in the Paiute language, they call him let's see, I guess I've been looking at my notes here, but they called him the Nahanadu, is that right? Nahanadu. The testimony was called Ugwahana. And so one by one, individuals would stand forth and speak. The Nahanadu would sit on the ground in front of the fire, pull his hat down over his eyes, and just stare at the ground and just listen. And others would gather around and hear the testimony. And it was up to the judge to decide, when he'd had enough sessions and heard enough information, to make some sort of a assessment of guilt or crimes or, you know, persons. And so it was fairly sophisticated. The system of justice was eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth. You know, sounds kind of like Moses, right? And so that's part of the story. So that's, am I way over time? I'm at about 45 or 50. Okay, so let me just kind of wrap up here then. After you get all the research, then what do? You're going to start writing. So I had this 45-page document of all this information I gathered, and so I hung out in McDonald's. I got really attached to fraps, and until I found out how much cream was in them. And I spent a lot of time in my office. My wife started calling it the my box. And I went up to Dock and Owls a lot and hung out in these cabins. I hung out in libraries a lot. So I mentioned critique groups a lot. There's one in Redlands, the IHOP, that I spend a lot of time with, but all these people help me. So anyway, there's 2 red letter days for me in the writing of this book. And one of them was from when I got an email from Kent Stoddard. He said the historical novels can be challenging to pull off, but this book hits it out of the park and presents both sides of the story. It is about the murder of a Paiute Indian in the small town of Bridgeport. The white population was backed into a corner and were terrified of the local Indians. The Paiutes just wanted justice and understanding. It leads to a climax that could easily happen in a small isolated town during the closing days of the 1800s. This is a very good read. And that made my day when I got this, because, you know, historians sometimes don't like historical novels because it gives people some ideas that aren't really true. But he's been a big fan of the book and really encouraging. Did you want to say something, Dave? Oh, okay, yeah. And the second red letter day for me was in March. February, I got a phone call saying that the book had been selected as a Spur Award finalist by the Western Writers of America. And so a couple of weeks, my wife and I are going to South Dakota to go to their convention and get a free lunch and a certificate, you know. So anyway, right now the book's available here in Lee Vining at the Mono Basin History Museum. You've heard of that? Yeah, and as of tomorrow, it'll be available at the Mono Lake Committee, Mono County Museum at Kent Sporting Goods in Bridgeport, Minot County Museum in Hawthorne, Bookie Joint in Mammoth Lakes, Spellbinder in Bishop, and 17 outlets that are managed by the Eastern Sierra Interpretive Association, and of course also on Amazon.com. So again, I mentioned the Fact from Fiction page that you can access through the this website right here that's listed on the last page of the book. And so we're at the end. Any questions? Thank you.
Are there any questions for Wayne in person or on Zoom?
I have some ideas. Right now, I'm trying to just market this one. A lot of writers don't like marketing and don't know how to do it. And I'm trying, but it's not, I'm learning quickly. It's not a way to make a living or make any money. It's just fun. It's a hobby, you know? And so, but I do have some ideas. I've thought about doing a book called The Pranks of the West, the Old West. I'm aware of some practical jokes that were pulled in the olden days. If you know of a story, I'd like to hear it. But I also have 3 children's books in the works too. So,
Wayne, thank you for an outstanding meeting and great book that you put together and all that. This is the book. It is available for the Mono Basin Historical Society in our museum or online. No online? There's no online sale, sorry. But we have plenty here to please come up and order them and buy them. Okay, great book. Thank you, Wayne.
Dave Carl, there was a question about the ghosts and dates. You're muted right now. We can see you.
Dave, you need to unmute.
Unless you have ASL abilities I don't know about, we're just going to have to see you. And not.
I did talk about the dates and what it will be about. So we should be moving forward. We need to talk this week. Thank you all for attending, both in person and on Zoom. It was great. Look forward to the next month's meeting. A lot of excitement and intrigue happening with that one. And we're in the middle of a lightning and thunderstorm here as it's going on. So let's hope that the power stays on. Thank you all for attending, both Zoom and in person, and we'll see you next month. Thank you.